sort of high alert stuff. Here we go. Hello everyone and welcome to my build video, and this is not a Nightblade, I'm not cloaking, I'm just hiding in a rock that I can hide in for the Magicka DK. That's what we're doing, the Magicka Dragonite. So this build video is all generated around max stats. There's no fancy effects apart from Scoria here. We're generating every single stat that we need for max sustain, decent damage output, and serious tank ability. Someone well summarized it here as rock solid. Pretty good summary. So this build generally is a slight change on my previous build. So although the setup has changed a lot, the general play style of the build is almost the same as my previous Magicka DK Inferno. I have changed some skills and positions of skills based on the fact that, again, it's no CP, and the way you generate damage and sustain and all that is so different in no CP. But no CP is something I'm very used to. I've played since the beta up until the patch 1.5. It was all about learning to sustain. And so I've got the experience there. Even though I didn't play Magicka DK back there, I've learned a lot about the Magicka DK by now. And I gotta say, this build is really good. I'm yet to die in it, 1 versus 1. I don't even think it's gonna be killable 1 versus 1. And I think the only thing you're gonna struggle to kill, unless someone is full tank, is a Templar, just because they have Purify. But that's just a kind of Magicka DK problem, and it always has been. So let's get on to the stats. So we're not going to buff the spell damage. Now, keep in mind, again, this is no CP. There is one stat that looks bad, but I will explain it. So, our Magicka is 40k. This is, of course, with champion points. Without champion points, you will see about 34k there. So, it'll be a bit lower, but not dramatically so. Our health in combat is 28.5 to 29-ish on the front bar, 27.7 on the back bar. And our stamina with no CP is going to be somewhere around 15.3. So we do lose a little bit, obviously, in each of those because of the CP passes, but not a huge amount. Our magic recovery is 939, a bit more than last patch, quite a lot more than last patch, because we do need it now. Our spell damage looks low. It's 1.5k, but last patch we were only running 1.6k, and I've changed one skill that compensates for that loss of spell damage. So although that damage looks low, our damage is completely generated from our max Magicka pool and from our dot pressure and our debuffs. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this build, and it's that stuff that makes the build strong. Don't look at the spell damage as a negative. It is very good, actually. You get away with it completely, and yeah, you'll get the idea in a sec. Our crit is 32%, which really isn't that bad, especially considering we're using the Atro, not the Thief, but I'll go over that again in a sec. Again, that's how we're getting the recovery. And our crit resist now is far higher. So last patch we were only 500 crit resist. Now we are 2,500 crit resist. But we can block just as much. No less blocking at all. So that's the stats. I think they're very sexy. Again, outside of the CP, you'll be about 34k Magicka. That's still pretty high for damage. It still does a great job. And yeah, no issues on there at all. So our sets. Every single piece of armor is sturdy. Every single piece is sturdy. We're trying to minimize our block cost as much as possible. It matters big time for the build. It's important that you can block because your survivability is going to be generated largely from taking less damage. You're taking very little crit damage because of that huge crit resistance. Remember, that's no CP crit resist, by the way. If I leave CP, I've got no points in there at all. So that crit resist is the same in no CP. So most people in no CP are probably hitting like 4k, crit for 6k. That crit's completely negated. We're completely negating that crit. So this crit resist is really making us tanky, especially when we're blocking and we're just taking so little damage from anything. It really pans out good. Our sets then. 5 Impregnable. This is a brand new set from Battlegrounds. Quick disclaimer, you're going to find this an absolute bitch to get a hold of. It took me 5 days with a lot of my stream trying to help me find it. I think I had over 50 different people from the stream alone, 20 friends, 20 guildmates, all trying to get these pieces in sturdy for me. Eventually got them. And how we're going to use this Impregnable is we're going to use the body in sturdy, the boots in sturdy, the legs in sturdy. The legs, by the way, seem a bit more common. It's the chest I could never find. And then we are using the weapon and shield. That's going to be the best way to min-max your resistances. And again, that shield's going to be sturdy. Your weapons, by the way, are going to be sharpened on the front bar, defending on the back bar. Adjust it as you like. If you prefer to play sharpen on both, be my guest. If you prefer defending on both, be my guest. But those are the sort of traits you're going for. We're then running heavy scoria 1, 2. So sturdy shoulders, sturdy helmet. If you don't have the sturdy shoulders, it's obviously a pretty rare item. But you do have it in maybe light. You can obviously swap the way I piece my armor together. You'll see how I do that in a sec. But adjust it as you can. If you haven't got something else, I guess you're stuck with one shit trait. But it's not the end of the world, I suppose. The helmet, just get on farming. Don't be a lazy shit. It's easy enough to get. And then our third set after Scoria and Impregnable is Desert Rose. So the return is here. I've dropped Sirabane off from last patch, which is why you see a bit less spell damage here. The reason I have dropped Sirabane off is in this patch, I really do believe that there are a lot of stamina players. Generally speaking, Battleground is predominantly proc blades. And proc blades, or any proc stamina, hits you very hard, but you're gaining no sustain from them for Sirabane. So I had to change the set. I tried a few different sets. Other ones you might want to try yourself. Magicka Furnace, but that's only melee attacks. So against the Sork, you're fucked. You're never going to sustain. Sirabane is still viable if you do want to try play it. You just have to make sure that you're keeping a Magicka player on you at all times and keeping your block up at all times. Also important. Obviously, that's a lot harder to do with the changes, but I think this build can pretty much perma-block if you play it intelligently with your buffs. It's not as easy, but you can get close to it. And then there is Lich you could play. I personally wouldn't do that. I don't think it fits the playstyle too much. You want an instant refuel, basically. That instant refuel is what really helps. And of course, those are sturdy. So we run those on the light gloves and belt. That way we get the best resistances. So heavy shoulder, helmet, boots, body and legs. And the light on the gloves and the sash, since they have the lowest resistances, we min-max our resistances. Again, if you can't find the pieces, you can sacrifice the resistances. I would greatly suggest not going light on the chest, though. That's a decent chunk of resistances gone. The rest of our Desert Rose is then on the jewellery. 1, 2, and luckily for me, 1 out of 3 now. Gold as well. You can get that from the reward mails from the end of a campaign. I don't know yet if Battlegrounds. We'll see. And my glyphs on those are reduced cost of blocking, and spell damage. This reduced cost of blocking glyph is the single most important asset to your build. Full stop. The amount of extra tank ability that this gives is game changing. People don't realize how essential this is to help your block ability. It's just such a huge reduction. And the sturdy is still worth it. If we take 2 sturdy away, our block cost is going to go up by about 100. If we take this block cost away, we really will go down the full 200, sorry. And it also reduces the cost of bash, which to be honest is pretty good, because I do bash weave a lot actually. I often weave a bash into my rotation, which I'll show you in a sec. For the extra damage, it does work out pretty good. A quick explanation, by the way, why I'm using no impent. Obviously, this set is already giving me a crit resist. You don't need it, so you can go full sturdy to maximize your block reduction. You don't really need more than 2.5k crit resist in no CP. I mean, very few things are hitting you that hard. Even if they get a power up, they might not even hit that hard. It just works. So, our glyphs on the weapons. Obviously, weapon damage on our front bar. Our back bar, then, is actually fairly important. There's 2 ways of running this. The first one is to run what I'm running right now, Magicka damage and Steel Magicka. Although that's not much, that's still giving you a little bit of regen. It's 6 seconds, I think, is the glyph cooldown, so it's still giving you like, I don't know, 90 regen, which is, it's pretty solid. In fact, even more than that, it's still like 120 regen. So it is a respectable glyph, and I think you're going to see it a bit more on decent players. The other thing that you can use, and I deeply advise you not to, because if you do this, I'm going to be very direct, you're a piece of shit. And that sounds really offensive, I get that, but you are. You can use these ones here, and I would suggest this one here. So Drain Magicka, increasing the cost of their abilities by 30% and Restore Magicka. To this day, I don't know why that increased cost hasn't just been taken off, because even the sustain from that poison is OP, or at least good. The cost increase is a absolute tumor in this world. Please don't use open world. It's so disrespectful as a PvPer. It really is disgusting. So please try and avoid that. But of course, it's your choice. I can't stop you. It's just like, I don't respect anyone who uses that shit, to be honest with you. Our food then is Tri-Food. We're using that to obviously get our stamina up, as well as our Magicka and health. Our sustain is fine at this point because of the Desert Rose. The Desert Rose, by the way, gives you about 2.4k every 4 seconds on a 15% proc rate. That does include dots. Scaffer, I think it was, did the maths on this. He said it's roughly 800 average if you're 1 versus 1. So you're getting almost all of that in regen. You're getting it about every 6 seconds. In open world, you're probably going to see that 100%, and that's something I've experienced. So you do get that most of the time. The other bonuses aren't that great, like spell resist, health, magicka, but it's not abysmal. I mean, spell resist, it'd be nicer if that was physical resist, since your physical resist is generally lower and there's more stamina, but it's like whatever. The magicka and health are great though. You're getting more tank ability and you're getting more stats. So our skills, there's quite a few changes on our skill bar. This is really worth paying attention to. First bar is Burning Embers, pretty generic, nearly always on the bar. This is going to do a very large dot. You're going to cast it again if you need a heal. Excellent set. Very, very nice. Our second set then is Flame Lash. That lashes an enemy for your normal damage. My damage isn't terrible. It's a little bit less, again, than last patch. We're at him 400 less on the tooltip. But again, I'll show you how we compensate for that damage. And we are then using, instead of our original skill on the front bar, which was Inferno, Mage Light. So Mage Light is going to increase the magicka on our front bar and generate crit on the front bar instead of the Inferno skill. The reason that's important is we need to compensate for some damage losses for adjusting for no CP. I think raw stats really outweighs a lot of things, unless you go in the proc route for stamina, which is obviously really kind of strong. Raw stats are really, really important. A lot of people underestimate that over skills. I really think Mage Light is too good to miss in this sort of patch with no CP playstyle. It's such a good skill for generating damage. It's going to give you more magic to play with. Just generically, it's a great skill, and it's giving us that crit on the front bar, even better. With them running Fossilized, that is obviously a root and a damage. You could run Shattering Rocks. I like the fact that this one keeps them stunned, but Shattering Rocks is a bit more viable this patch, especially with a root cooldown. I don't know. I still like Fossilized. I like the fact that you can get your target held in place for a bit, because especially against targets that are moving a lot, it could be a nightmare as a DK with no gap close to keep up, so it helps a lot with that. Entropy, of course, we're running the health morph on this one. There's no real point in using the healing morph since we don't like a heavy attack that much and it doesn't hit that hard. So you want the extra health, even though it's not that great in terms of the health. We're getting our major sorcery. It's a fairly respectable heal over time. It's just a good skill all round. So nice and cheap as well, which is even better. Our front bar ultimate then is Leap. Huge tooltip on that, 15k unbuffed. It's hitting really hard. That's going to be your execute, and you're going to time that with your Scoria. And on your back bar, another skill. So I'll explain the combo in a sec. I won't need to demonstrate it because it's so similar to the Inferno playstyle. The back bar then is Igneous Shield, Major Mending. You get this for 2.5 seconds only now, or 3 seconds or whatever it is. It's still really good, so you have enough time to Igneous Shield, Dragon Blood, cast your Embers for the full heal, and that way you'll get a decent heal, and that's generally what I do with it. And you can also use it to proc your Earthen Heart passives, which will get you your stamina back, Helping Hands, which actually has a pretty large buff now. So as a Magicka player, you're getting a lot more stamina back from there. You used to get about 550, 600 because it used to scale off your max pool. Now you get a 990, so nearly 1,000 stamina. That works really, really great, and it's a nice way to sustain your stam pool as well. Skill number 2, so this now has moved to the back bar, is Flames of Oblivion. This is the best skill in the game, in my opinion. I don't know why nobody uses this skill. It still, to this day, amazes me how few DKs use this skill. It's a bigger dot than any dot I know in the game, because it's doing over 25k, or close to it, unbuffed. It's cheap as fuck, and it got a 33% cost reduction, and it gives you crit, and more importantly, it's not just a small dot, it generates it in bursts. So to this day, I don't know why people don't use this skill, but we put it on our back bar. The reason we put that on our back bar is because it gives crit again, so we're keeping our crit for Dragon Blood. We're getting the heal crit that way more often. Dragon Blood obviously uses Coagulating Morph, the other one's a part of poop. Does the same as a potion, so definitely go for Coagulating on your heal. I'll leave the fourth. We're going to Volatile Armor. That's your resistance buff. Great dot if anyone's attacking you. Very, very useful skill. And then 2 more skill changes here from the last build. First one, there is no Talons in my build. So with the root changes, roots can still be good in some fights, but too often I find, because when you roll dodge out of a root now, you get a 2-second root immunity, you can waste a lot of magicka. Not only is Talons 50% more expensive than Engulfing Flames for worse damage, but it's also, it's too avoidable. If you root someone, you're giving them 2-second immunity. And consider this, right? I fossilize them. I proc a root from fossilize. So they're down on the floor. They're rooted. Good. They break that CC and roll dodge. At that point, about 1 second's passed because the roll dodge is going to take a second. I can't do it for 2 seconds. Realistically, I'm going to wait another second. So that's 4 seconds just to make sure I don't waste the magicka on the root. If we even include the Zenimax factor, we're probably even talking 5 seconds here. So at this point, we can nearly fossilize again. So personally, I think dropping talents is worth it. The other route that you can go is you can run the other CC, Stone Fist, and keep talents on your bar. The reason I still like Fossilize is there are still some targets out there that block a fair bit. Not permanent. Nobody can permanent block completely. You can get close, but nobody's going to permanent block. But like, I love that Fossilize breaks that. It gives you a lot more opportunity to break down a rotation. And also it gives that bit of route time that's just so nice. So I still go for Fossilize. And then we go for Burning Breath. The other really nice thing about Engulfing Flames here that makes it a yes for me in my books is because we've lost that spell damage, that 120 from the Sylvain. Oh, damn it. I should have turned off my alerts. I'll get back to that. Because I have dropped off my spell damage buff, we can run Engulfing Flames to compensate because it gives you 10% more damage from fire abilities. Basically, every ability as a DK is fire-based. And so we're generating the same damage and more. So we lost 400 tooltip on our whip, but we're going to gain 10%, which is 780. So that compensates for the damage loss. So it's also a great dot. It works very, very well with the build. And it's perfect. Yeah. Our back bar ulti is now not Meteor. So originally we had front bar Meteor, back bar Leap for the extra Magicka on the front bar. Now we're running the one-hand shield ulti. And the reason I run this is for emergency situations. So if you get in a situation where a lot of people are on you, this build has enough survivability so that you can maintain your block at the right times, a decent amount of that time. Build up for the spell wall and pop the spell wall. And you can keep the aggro off you that way and wait for your opportunity to turn your defense into offense, at which point you save for the leap as your offensive. So it's also very cheap. It does give you free blocking for 7 seconds. I often use the time when that's up to weave heavy attacks to get some stand back in my pool. It just works great. So anyway, your rotation. So rotation for the build is going to be as follows. First thing you're going to do, absolutely always, is Embers, because you're going to take some damage during the rotation. You're going to cast your Embers on them. You're then going to Entropy after the Embers. I think Entropy Embers should come first. That's going to get your spell damage buff. You're going to weapon swap. Your Volatile should already be up pre-fight, so we're going to ignore that. You're going to put on your Burning Breath. You're then going to cast Flames of Oblivion, because that's going to proc the dot on the first proc. That's going to pressurize your opponent. Recast Embers. That's going to heal you. At that point, you're going to fossilize, whip, whip. And during that second whip, your Inferno tick should be, roughly speaking, coming in at the same time. So you get a big burst of damage there. If you have an ulti, dump it there. But the combo of Inferno, Scoria, and either an ulti or a procced whip is very, very large burst. A lot of people underestimate the burst that a DK can get if they build right. Again, you've got to run Inferno. It's just such a good skill. To this day, it amazes me how few people run that. But anyway, that's the build. If you're going to cry about Mistform, it's still shit. It's a huge waste of Magicka. Don't know what you do in your lives, but each to their own. If you don't like the build, it's your choice. You don't have to run it. But I can promise you that this build performs at the absolute top level. It's really, really, really powerful. I've had some huge KDs on this in Battlegrounds. I'm very rarely dying. It's got great survivability. Damage output is just as good as last patch. And our survivability is all around great. So, champion points. I will do this. I wanted to get most of the build done before that. Disclaimer, you can't use this in all but one campaign or open world. So, I don't care entirely about this. I have, however, min-maxed it point by point. And, a big deal on this, if you are using CP, it will always round down. So, if I quickly show you that. Oh, something else I missed actually quickly. We are a Vampire, by the way, and we're using Atro. With Vampire for the extra recovery, I might drop that though. So, anyway. CP, if you are on X percentage, so let's imagine that's 12.08% there. If that is 12.99 KD, it will still give you 12%. Sorry, if it's 12.99% break free, it's still going to give you 12%. So you want to find a point where your points are just above that threshold to get the best game per point. What I've done is I've made my trees spread around in essential trees and built more into the main trees that getting good game per point and all of that, to a point where every single tree is just above a rounding error. So we have 7 in Siphoner. This lowers their sustain. You don't want many in there. It's only a 3-second debuff. You don't really feel it that much. But it's worth just putting a couple of points into this scale so badly if they're stacked in the same tree. 28 in Warlord, that's going to reduce our cost break free by 12%. A lot of stamina saved there. And again, it's just over that rounding point. Everything will be just over. 16 in Bashing. Again, in our rotation, if I'm on a really high offense, I will always light attack ability bash. I'll also weave that bash, especially now we've got this glyph in. You can afford that bash for the extra burst of the damage. A bash is really actually a lot of damage. You can get 700 to 1k with that shit. So don't underestimate a bash in the weave. And thus, it's worth having some points there. 7 in Mooncalf, we have a bit of stamina recovery. It's given us good gain per point. We might as well put it there. 37 in Tenacity for our heavy attacks. 43 in Arcanist for Magicka sustain. 20 into Tumbling for roll dodge. And 52 into Shadow Ward for the blocking, because blocking is very, very important. In the blue tree, we have 7 in Blessed for healing. This tree scales really, really badly now, so I don't really like to put too many into there. 20 into Elfborn. For a bit of extra crit. We do have 30% crit. Might as well make the most of that. 49 into Elemental Expert. We're getting 11% on that. 14 into Spell Erosion. Getting very good gain per point for those first few points. A decent amount of penetration. Pretty nice damage gain. 40 into Shattering Blows. So this will really help counter your Sorks. Very, very handy for breaking down the shields. Great passive. And it scales super, super good per point on this patch. It's one of the best scaling of all the trees. So definitely worth some points in there. 52 Master Arms, again, scales very good, super good for a damage boost, very, very strong tree. And 28 into Thaumaturge for dots. Exploiter is simply not worth it. We only have one route, we're not getting much off balance time, and it costs so much of wasted points in Thaumaturge, so I don't think it's worth it, personally. If you like it, feel free to go for it, this is just my build. Ironclad 52%, that's going to count out completely against our Master Arms, so a lot of these trees are balancing out against each other. Again, the resistance, you'll see the same over here. I go for 14 in Spell Shield, so I counter out my own tree, basically. And that way you only see the benefit of the uncounterable factors. 28 in Fixed Skin for dots. There's quite a few of them out there. We do actually like to get dotted up. It does help our Desert Roast. 37 in Hardy and 37 Elemental Defender. Don't bother putting any more in there. Scale's pretty shit. We're going to waste a lot of points from a PvP perspective. 2 in Bastion. 7 in Quick Recovery. Same as the other healing. The Bastion just helping our Igneous. You get a 1% for that, so you can't go wrong. 19 in Expert Defender. Actually, I think I need one more in Bastion. I just realized. I think that will go down to 0%, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I'll test that off stream. Feel free to test it yourselves. Expert Defender, 12.1% there. That's going to help light and heavy attacks. A lot of people wonder why I put so many points in there. It gains a lot per point. People don't realize how much light and heavy attacks really factor into damage. When you're looking at PvE recap, light and heavy attacks are nearly always up there in your top DPS. It's so much damage, and you got a lot of things like Sorks, Magicka Nightblades, that sort of stuff that are really light and heavy attacking a lot. It's really worth putting some points there. A lot of people are going to skip that tree when they do it the first time. I promise you, you're going to feel those points big time in resistance. Last but not least, again, counteracting those 14 that we put in penetration, we put 14 into resistances. So, I think I have covered everything. I think. So, good luck with the build. Next one coming out will be the Stamina Nightblade. I got some cool ideas on there. The sets for this, not too bad to farm. I mean, Impregnable's going to be a bitch. Scoria, the shoulder's going to be a pain. The helmet just takes a bit of time. Desert Rose, obviously buyable from the boxes. The gold rings, you don't need them. It's such a small difference. I get it because I'm a bit of a picky bitch, but you don't necessarily need it. And yeah, good luck with the build. Potions, tripods, I forgot to mention that, but that's obvious. Wish you all the best, and I hope that it works out for you. If you don't want to run it, be my guest. You don't have to. There's always someone says, this build's shit. Why am I using this? The answer is, I don't know. If you don't like the build, you don't have to use it. But I can tell you the build's not shit. It's strong.